So the big story in the news, of course, Google updates a malicious problem in Chrome, which I happen to be using right now. Gotcha. How you guys doing?
Good. How you doing, Carl?
All right.
Good. It's been good.
You know, we might as well start with this Google thing because this happened while we were in Vegas last week. And by the way, sorry we're late. We were in Vegas, and I really did have a problem with Zencastr. We couldn't record.
Carl, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah,
right?
Not this time. And it was funny because I was actually late for our recording that we couldn't do because of a security problem. I don't know if you remember this, Patrick, and Patrick was with me. The keys for everything.
I do.
The little plastic keys for your room, for the elevator, and for the gate between the convention center and the hotel, they stopped working, or they worked really weirdly. And so I went up to one of these guys and I said, "Hey, what's up with these keys? The gate is closed and the keys don't work." He says, "Yeah, they've been having a problem all week, and apparently they're not magnetizing sufficiently." That's what happens.
Yeah, a lot of the elevators, you have to key in to get your floor, and a lot of times it wasn't working.
It was kind of a mess.
Yeah.
But anyway, it turns out we couldn't record anyway. But that's why we're here now, a little bit late, but better late than never. And right as we were about to record, I saw this story in Forbes. Google suddenly issues new emergency security update for 3.2 billion Chrome users.
So not many.
Yeah.
Not many.
No.
Guys, you think you have deployment problems.
I know, right? So, hey, for all of you who are using Chrome, and if you go to the upper right-hand little three dots next to each other, if there's a little green arrow pointing up, that means there's an update.
I didn't know that.
Right? You need to click that and actually click update.
Well, actually, I think Chrome was one of the first to do this. When you close everything and reopen the browser again, it will automatically update.
It will. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but if you got a system that's on for too long.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who open a bazillion tabs and never actually reboot and just keep it all open.
Who would do that?
I could give names, but
I think I'm guilty of that. Yeah, we should be rebooting every day.
I reboot every day.
Yeah.
Honestly, add that and your cell phone once a week. Those are some strong recommendations.
You should reboot every day, and you should shower every day, whether you need it or not.
That's your STW homework, kids.
But if you get to pick one, reboot.
Reboot over shower. Ew. All right, GitLab. What happened?
GitLab's an interesting one. So this is for I know we have a corpus of developers who listen to this podcast. So if you're one of those developers and you're using GitLab, you probably saw an email come out about compromise they had and the fact that you had to change your password. We normally, if we get these emails, we always go, "Oh, this is probably a garbage email," and delete it. It's not really GitLab. It's some hacker trying to get my credentials or get logged into my GitLab or whatever. No, in this case, it actually is a GitLab notification. This is CVE 2022-1162.
Do we have an example of that email that they sent? Because if they did it right, the right way nowadays to notify your users is to tell them to go to your website, tell them what the URL is, but don't provide a link, and tell them what to do. Because if you give them a link, you're training them to do the wrong thing. If you tell them to go to the website, that's what they should be doing.
Right.
So I haven't seen the email. I saw it said to change your password, but didn't really send out any links because it's your own sort of GitLab install. But what's interesting about this is the reason there was this compromise, if you will, is there's a default password module in GitLab that creates a default password for a user.
I blame the developers.
And the default password is 123.
No.
QWE. QWE in uppercase. Exclamation point at
hash
pound.
code.
Or hash, right. And that's so
Plus
those are
zero.
just really literally the three characters in the upper left hand corner of your keyboard plus 0 times the user.password length max. So what that means is if our password length max was 30, it would take these first 12 characters we said, the 1, 2, 3, QWE, QWE, exclamation, etc., and it would add 18 zeros at the end, because that was 12 characters.
Padding,
and that's it. It would create a 30-character password, and that's the 30.
It doesn't really matter what the pattern is. If it's known, it's hackable.
If it's a pattern, it's not good.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So it's very well written piece of code that puts a standard password on everything. So you should go upgrade.
So I remember back in the early days of computing, these big mini computers and even mainframe computers would come with default accounts and passwords, and they were always ignored. And most people didn't delete the accounts; they just used the accounts. They didn't
People
change
are afraid
the
of
password.
being locked out. There's a fear of being locked out. Well, what if I get locked out? And to that end, what a lot of people don't realize is some of the cloud providers, I know Azure had this guidance for a while. I think it's still in effect, which is before you put your administrator account for your Azure account on multi-factor authentication, you're supposed to have another administrator account with a hellacious password that you don't put on 2FA in case it fries.
Right.
And so it's a backup. We always have these. Password safes, password managers are technically a backup because we're afraid of being locked out. But it's a natural fear. The problem is you have to resist the idea of default passwords. It's just not a good idea.
And especially the ones that come with the device, like your freaking Wi-Fi stuff, right?
Yep.
192.0.0.1 admin.
Right.
Change it, for crying out loud.
Well, and there was a movement for a while to have that happen dynamically when you set up the device. And some organizations went into that and became much more secure, and others didn't. And we still have.
I think the problem is you run into a lot of different types of device. Well, like I plug my toaster in here, and if it has some sort of connectivity to IoT, some refrigerator connects to the internet, there's not necessarily going to be a published change the password on your refrigerator, right?
Dwayne,
there's a lot of times there's a
If you have an IP address on your refrigerator, I'm never going to stop slapping you.
Yes.
If I did, I would have hacked it by now.
Well, in his defense, his kitchen is token ring.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Good luck on that.
Oh, 100,000 people listening just went, what the hell are they talking about? It's ancient history. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Ancient history.
Sorry.
Vines anyone?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. As old as the token books.
All right. So basically, if you're a GitLab user, and even if you didn't get this email, you should go look it up, right?
Yep.
You can go change your password. Doesn't matter what happened. Go change your password. Make sure the default's not on.
Default users that you may or may not have created.
All right. So we've talked about distributed denial of service attacks, which are when computers get hijacked in vast numbers to focus their laser beams on a particular server and just overwhelm it with traffic. So there was one about a beast mode botnet.
Yes.
What happened here? So
this is we've probably heard over the years the Mirai botnet. A Mirai botnet was one that had attacked IoT type devices, so camera systems and POS systems and that sort of stuff. That all had. By the way, here again, this is a good lead-in, Carl, to the last thing we were just talking about with default usernames and passwords. The way that Mirai populated primarily was trying admin, and it would then get access to a device, and then it would implant itself in that device, then start to spread, and then talk to a command and control and be able to.
And it often was hitting IoT devices.
Yes. So to expand their network, a lot of the botnets moved over to we can try default usernames and passwords, and that gets us some. But what happens when somebody like Linksys, let's say, releases a patch for a critical bug? Well, that's if we knew about it beforehand, that was a 0 day.
Yeah.
So we could have compromised the box. But knowing about it after the patch comes out, it's called a 1 day exploit. So there's a patch. 99% of the people on the internet haven't applied it yet. So let's go exploit it. And this is the new tactic that botnets are using, and that's what this beast mode is there was a series of routers, XionCom routers, that there was a patch for. And now they're going, and they've I want to say it's 1, 2, 3 different. 4, 5, 6, 7 different CVEs. Exploits that were released with the patch, and now they go out. The Mirai botnet goes out and adds these as targets to exploit. So, moral of that story: you should not only be patching your Chrome browser, but you should also be patching, any IoT devices like your firewalls and wireless access points and that sort of stuff. Because if a patch comes out today, you may be a part of a botnet tomorrow if you don't apply it.
Yeah.
So I checked my Wi-Fi router and got the latest, firmware, and it does automatic updates of firmware.
Yes.
And so
awesome.
I'm wondering if that is the norm for most, Wi-Fi routers that you've bought in the last 2 years or something.
Yeah. So.
And how far back does that go? I guess I'm asking you, how worried should our listeners be?
So you probably have a reasonably good router. Mine does the same thing, right? So I have a Google Mesh at my house. And for those who I know, there are people who listen to this trying to OSINT all the things I have every time I mention it. But I do have a Google Mesh at my house.
I was going to say, I wasn't going to say which one I have.
No, I do. And you know what? It's fantastic. It's a closed device. It automatically updates. And frankly, the Google Project Zero guys are amazingly brilliant at finding exploits, so I trust their devices. But that thing always patches. But that wasn't a cheap router.
Yeah,
that
you're
wasn't
right.
like a $20 wireless access point.
The one I have is pretty expensive as well.
Yeah, I want to say it was like $300 or $400 for me to put this in the house. So I think when you start looking at some of the smaller commodity, $20, $30 wireless access point / router / firewall / coffee maker / whatever.
Refrigerator.
And you
refrigerator. Refrigerator. The refrigerator interface.
I want a refrigerator that has a firewall.
Oh my God.
And you put that in. I don't know
Here
that they ought to
slap. It's going to be the slap heard around the internet. All right, sorry.
At least
it's just a dumb idea. I don't understand.
It is
that you know of.
It's a dumb idea.
Yeah. Well, there's this race. I saw a statistic. It's a couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks? It was a book. The book I was listening to, where they were talking about like IoT device explosion, and it's like people in the United States plug in a total of 67 devices per second, something like that. Yeah.
So here's my problem with high-tech refrigerators. I have one.
Wow.
And I didn't get it by choice. I got it because the price was right, the ratings were high.
You trying to talk us out of the slap?
The warranty was good. No, I have I'm just saying I have a high-tech refrigerator, and it has Wi-Fi in it. I don't use it, but here's the thing: it's a Samsung, right? Display case. I don't know what the hell it is. It's really high-tech. But here's the problem with high-tech refrigerators. There's so many buttons on the front panel that you lean against it or breathe on it and you're locked. And now it's not making ice.
Yeah.
And and there's a special combination. You have to stand on your head and press 3 buttons and bow 3 times to the east in order to get it to unlock. Seriously, I have to look it up online. I have to go to the PDF, the manual, and it tells me how to F this thing.
That's so burglars don't get ice. No ice for burglars.
That's what it is.
It's like, the old fridges worked fine.
Yeah, they do.
We didn't need a brain.
So remember when when audio cards started going up to 128-bit? And only your dog could notice the difference between that and the 256-bit. And then they just went to the motherboard and no one talked about them ever again.
No one cared about audio cards.
The refrigerators are going to have a reset soon, I think.
Yeah.
I don't need a video screen to show me what's inside.
Yeah, but it's going to be on the back, on the bottom, and you'll have to pull it out and get on your hands and knees and push the button and hold it in for
I don't need a
15
screen
seconds.
to tell me what's in the refrigerator. That's what the door is for.
I don't need that. I don't need the fridge to
That's what my
text
camera
me
phone is for.
and tell
Open
me
it
I'm
up,
low
take a picture.
Hey,
you are
guys
low
sound
on
really
milk.
old.
Shut up. Slap the refrigerator.
I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh, man, I got one of those redneck videos where I'm going to take my refrigerator out in the yard and shoot it with a shotgun. I'll call Patrick. We'll have a refrigerator party. All right, anyway.
Alrighty.
So I think we're done with that one. Let's talk about the FBI.
We like the FBI. I like the FBI.
So what happens when the Russians infiltrate a whole bunch of devices in the United States and people don't update and the U.S. government thinks that they're going to use it for a big attack? What would you do?
Wait a minute. So unwind, rewind, go back. Right. What happened?
So the Russians, what?
What happened?
The Russians had a botnet.
Not even just any Russians, but the Russian sandworm actors.
Yes, which otherwise known as Putin's posse.
Yes. Highly technical, state-sponsored net assassins. Go ahead, Patrick. Sorry.
And they had a botnet infecting network firewalls, and they were pretty deep in
Linksys,
a lot of organizations.
Microtech, Netgear, QNAP, T-Link.
U.S.
They were attacking U.S.
devices.
properties.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and probably other places in the world. And the FBI, probably in concert with cyber warfare divisions and places like that, took on an operation called Cyclops Blink. They wanted to make the Cyclops blink. And so you poke them in the eye. And so they patched all those devices and told Russia,
low tech. I like it.
We found your stuff, and here it is. They went through the command. They took over the command and control, and then used that to find all the devices and patch them.
Wow.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting parts of this article. So the big sort of firewall device appliance that was breached was the WatchGuard device, and there is a like prior, this same group had hit what I was talking about before with like Linksys and Microtech and that sort of stuff, and that was all patched. And then this WatchGuard device now is the new breach, same team, this Sandworm team. But you're right, this is an interesting new twist where the FBI is like, hey, I can see multiple U.S. devices that have this, are infected. And they got a court order to actually log in.
Nice accent there.
Thank you.
Court order.
Where's he from? Where's he from? It's Boston.
Court order.
There's no odds in that.
Now the hackers know where we are.
You get it with a glass of
water.
water.
No, pack the car. So they got a court order to.
Didn't understand that.
Actually, I know,
Too
right?
many R's in that.
All right.
The fact that there were some R's to actually log into these devices and clean them up.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because at the end, this article on Ars Technica, like the last sentence is it says Williams, the former NSA hacker, said the FBI was clear the commands it executed and did not allow federal agents to monitor any user's data. And he said that needs to be publicized.
So you know what's brilliant about this is the FBI did the right thing, because the alternative would be calling support and waiting on hold for 9 hours per company.
Yes.
Multiply that by 1.5 million companies.
The only alternative would be to let the Russians hack us.
Okay, wait. If you're But
there is no other
home, please. Yes, this is the FBI. I need to speak to somebody in security. What is your name again?
But wait, if you're the FBI, you're the best of the best. You're the tip of the spear. You are the hackers, the security guys, and now you end up being help desk for a lot of companies who
when
don't even know you're out there helping.
Boom, done. You're welcome.
This is like the government finding out that all the school buses in random counties around the United States have bad brakes and just going and fixing them.
Just fix them.
Just fix the brakes.
And it's kind of like
it's community service.
It is awesome.
You know, it kind of, awesome. You know, we're from the government. We're here to help. Actually helping.
This time they were.
This time they were actually helping.
So the Russian conflict means the gloves are fairly off.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is the government's ability to actually act like the cyber superpower that we really are.
Right.
And I had this conversation with a few people. I wasn't sure if it was something I was going to say, but I think the word is out. I believe that to some extent for the last 10 years, it's been almost like the bombing of Coventry. So back in the Second World War, we broke the German codes, and the British found out that Coventry was going to be bombed, and they let it be bombed rather than let the Germans know that they broke the code.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent, if the U.S. had done these kinds of operations in the past, it would have let our enemies know how good we were at the cyber stuff.
Right.
And so now we're, because Russia is on the ropes and desperate, we're pulling out all the stops to make sure they don't damage U.S. interests and, subdue sanctions, do those kinds of things. So I think you're going to see a more aggressive U.S. cyber response going forward. At least I hope you do.
Yeah.
This is a good example.
So unpacking that for our listener, dear listener, if the FBI is logged into your router, then they're there to help.
Yeah.
From the government, I'm here to help.
Right. Well, you see the FBI on your computer, they're there to help.
Now that you mention it, if they can log into your computer and fix stuff, they could do a lot of stuff. I mean, who knows what else they did?
Dude, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Right.
It's whether they choose to or not.
Right.
This is just the FBI. They're the ones that actually follow the rules. There's a couple other agencies that aren't so, shall we say, constrained, circumspect.
Maybe we'll talk about them someday.
So I got to ask the question, did other agencies take the list of all the devices not in the United States and do something else with those?
Well, it's funny you say that because I find it funny that this whole article is about the FBI, but then there's a quoted NSA guy at the end. So who knows, right?
And in unrelated news, the U.S. NSA botnet just grew by 80%.
Right. Woohoo!
Oh my god!
Oh, this is just an entertainment podcast, right? I mean,
is anyone else see black helicopters?
Exactly.
Actually, not advocating any of this stuff.
I'm advocating.
I have a web redirect service like TinyURL or Bitly or something like that, and somebody gets a malware in there, and everybody who uses my redirect site gets infected.
Yeah.
So talk about that for a second. Bitly and all that stuff. Not everybody has used those.
Right.
So let's define what that is.
So there used to be one called TinyURL. It was probably the first one. And you'd paste a long URL, and then it would give you TinyURL / and then like 4 or 5 characters, right?
And then eventually became 8 characters.
Yeah, and then 8 characters, right? But the whole idea is that, on a podcast, right? You don't want to read a long URL, it's just annoying to people to have to pause, write it down, or type it in. So you want something that you can communicate verbally, or in a video or something that's easy to type. And then Bitly came along, that's bit.ly, with the same idea, but then they also had custom Bitly, things, so like Bitly / STW. We could have done that for Security This Week. Yeah, so that's a redirect service. So it's like a shortener.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong, basically?
Well, basically, this could go wrong.
What happened?
So 16,500 websites of universities, local governments, adult content platforms, and personal blogs.
It was interesting that was thrown in there. Really?
Yeah, I'd say it's an interesting kettle of fish.
Government, university, and adult sites.
Rat distribution at its best.
Yep.
Are now, being redirected potential victims. And you could order, this is more of the, criminology as a service. You could order, like, I want college students studying biotech because I want to get to them before they get into the labs.
Yeah.
Right.
In New York City. You could do that. So that way you can maybe try to get into them while they're doing their internships at Pfizer, Moderna, et cetera. Very targeted.
Yeah, no, I was impressed. This is, it's probably more targeted than a normal organization would get with like a sales, Rainmaker sales list advertising company where you could be like, hey, I'd like to know all the CEOs and executives in New York. And they're like, I can't give you that. But on this, they'd be like, hey, I'd like to know every left-handed guy who's 5'2", who's on this adult site. And they're like, yeah, sure. We'll redirect them to a different site.
You know what I'm thinking
and
about?
That's what they were doing.
What I'm thinking about this, and it's interesting, is that this is one level up from a domain name system attack, like a DNS attack. A DNS attack would, you have a DNS server that translates, securitysthisweek.com to the IP address, like the phone number, right? You have a contact that has a name. You need the phone number, and because that's the phone system understands. So there's an IP address there. And if you hack that table, like at that DNS level, that's like the lowest level where you could send somebody who wants to go to Security This Week, you could send them to whatever, right? But this is on top of that. So this is a service that You pass in whatever URL you want, and it's got a database that says, oh, they want, tinyurl/ABCDE. What is that? And then they look up a URL in their database, and then they redirect your browser to that. So
Right.
it's one level up from the most sophisticated hack, but or at least the lowest level hack. But it's pretty good place to hack. I mean, if you're thinking about, Dwayne, it's awesome.
It is.
If you're thinking about how awesome it is, it's pretty awesome.
And the other interesting thing about this is they would do this on compromised web servers too. So they'd compromise a web server and put redirect actually on the website and redirect you to a different version of the website depending on who you are, where you were coming from, or what you were looking for.
Oh, wow.
So you might be going to a normal website that you normally go to.
Yeah.
And because that site got breached, now they're redirecting you to a different site. So just be careful.
Let's talk about a corollary to that. That's not one of the articles, but I wanted to warn everybody about.
Okay.
The Q codes.
Oh, yeah.
The QR codes.
Yeah, they're super convenient.
You know what that means?
They are super convenient.
Which means you shouldn't be using them. So I thought about if I were targeting, high net worth individual or Carl specifically.
What? I'm high net worth? Really? This is
I said
to me.
or. I said
or. Okay.
What I might do is I might go to the menu place where he's going to go to a dinner and take the Q code, banner that, is on the table and copy it and put a new one in with a different Q code.
Right.
Because printing's super cheap. That brings him to a page that delivers a malware and then brings him to the menu.
We talked
You'd never
about
know
this.
the difference.
We talked about this on an earlier show, and I thought it was a brilliant hack.
Yeah.
But you're right.
So and we're seeing it more and more, this kind of, that now we're seeing people like putting stickers up and they're malicious. People are curious. Oh, I wonder that Q code goes. That's like finding something on the subway and trying to eat it.
Yep, you're right. It's like finding gum under the seat and saying, I wonder if this is good.
So I want to, because this is similar to that, these URLs that you can't really see through to, you can't see what they are.
Right.
It's also why when you're wandering the internet, you need to kind of stay out of the back alleys. The back alleys are where you get the virus warnings and where things get dangerous. When the browser starts to lock up and things start to shimmy and shake.
Yeah.
You just got to stay on your guard.
Yes, you do. Man, that is an awesome hack, don't you think, Dwayne? What Patrick just said, where you just it's awesome. You just take a new QR code and just paste it over. You could even just take the code itself and just plaster it over, like on a bus or something.
Just put it on an ad at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You want get a free pizza from Domino's.
I wonder how hard it would be to take a picture of a Q code and have a program to code it, and then find the closest URL you could make to it by just filling in one block.
Ooh.
Just with a Sharpie. Could you fill in one block?
You guys aren't hackers, are you?
No.
No. Okay.
You just play them on TV.
All right. All right. So we did that. So there's one term in here that we should call out is RAT.
Yes.
Yeah, Remote Access Trojan.
Remote Access Trojan. It's not what you think.
It's a remote control software.
It is a remote control software that you don't know about. That's what it is.
Good. So I guess you really don't need to worry about that too much, but just be aware.
Yeah, and I guess the moral of that story is absolutely just be aware if you're going to a website that you normally go to, it should look like you normally expect it. If it changes vastly, you might have been redirected to the wrong place.
Yeah.
So just always double check the URL. And obviously, if I hate to throw the nay on top of Bitly and shortening URL things, because they are really nice to be able to shorten a URL and then maybe remember it, but you really don't know where they're going until you get there, which is kind of
dangerous.
I have a tip for you, and that is to get yourself an account at dnsimple.com, which is a great domain name service. And get your domain registered there, and then you can create your own short URLs. You just create these URL records, like if I want to send somebody to STW, I would do and I have my account pwop.com is my domain. I could do stw.pwop.com and just redirect there, and then you can control it.
Nice and easy.
Well, yeah, it's a little more technical, but you can do it. All right. So first there was Log4j. And as we learned last week, there was Spring4Shell.
Yeah.
And so now it's time for your moment of Spring4Shell with your hosts, Patrick and Dwayne.
So CISA, our U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, who does a bang-up job of keeping us in the know and telling us what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They say they're seeing this in the wild. They're seeing people use Spring4Shell vulnerability to get into places. And so if you thought you had time to figure it out, that time is up.
And if you weren't listening last week, Spring is a UI framework for Java, or the JDK, the runtime or whatever I think it is. But it adds Windows-like forms and things to Java applications.
And so you probably don't know where it's running in your world. And unlike Log4j, I didn't see as much angst and running around for people looking for it.
Yeah.
It's probably not as widespread as Log4j, but it's still widespread.
Right.
Well, and I think it's interesting in that, first off, the CVSS score, which is just think of it as like the risk score, right? You have your CVE number, which ties it to an issue, but then you have the CVSS score, which is like how replicatable and how easy it is, and that sort of stuff. And it started out, I think, in the 5s, and now it's like 9.8. So it is getting worse, and as we're seeing it being exploited by actors in the wild.
But this goes to 11, right?
Everything does. But what's interesting is they say, listen, you don't really need to worry about it unless you're displaying like model view controllers, so just like a display widget, if you will, that's using data binding. So if you have a part of your website that's pulling data from somewhere and displaying it using the Spring framework, that's when you're exploitable.
Now,
if you're just,
I got to say that most modern websites use that, and not Spring particularly, but they use data binding like Angular and React and Vue.
And you also don't know what interfaces, devices, and softwares are using.
Yeah,
that
so
might be why the score went up.
You won't know. Yeah. Even if you,
because it used to be, they were like, it's not that big a deal, and now it seems like it's getting to be more of a big deal.
Wow.
Yeah. This is where I think this is going to add fuel to the fire that we need to get on the industry to have a software bill of materials so we know what's in everything.
Yeah.
And then all an organization has to do is do a little search in an Access database and say, where am I using Spring?
Yeah.
And then go to the website for those vendors and say, tell me how you're using Spring and tell me that I don't need to patch.
Well,
because right now it's a guessing game.
It's a double-edged sword, though. Like, it would be great if every website in the world had a widget where you could click on it and it would tell you what they're using. But that would also make them vulnerable to attacks, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
They could just make that list available to those who buy from them.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. It would get out. But it's not like that's security through obscurity. The bad guys are going to find out one way or another.
Yeah, here's the deal. If you're using a website that hasn't been updated in 3 or 4 years, you might want to look somewhere else. I mean, you want to make sure that the company behind the website is on it and updating regularly. So, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of existential angst that we're giving our users right now. Don't worry about it. It's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
Don't get in a car with a serial killer. Just don't.
Yeah.
How do you know they're a serial killer? Well, once they start, eating your face, that's usually the way you find out.
That reminds me of that joke. Guy driving down the road,
picks up a hitchhiker.
Hitchhiker throws his thumb out, and he picks up this guy, and he's like, "Hey, thanks for picking me up." Hitchhiker says, "Thanks for picking me up. Hey, how'd you know I wasn't a serial killer?" And the driver goes, well, what would be the odds of 2 of us being in the car?
That's great. That's awesome. Truly awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so
and
Germany.
on that note.
By the way, just to digress here a little bit, I've been very impressed with Germany lately. Just in the government and in the way that they're responding to these things, the way they respond to international crises. Just been very impressed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody's gone their toes right now. If you look at the news that we're talking about today, a lot of it is, good stuff. Warnings being put out, things being shut down, things being foiled. There's some bad stuff, beast mode and GitLab, but it's not raining bad news, there's some good stuff in here too.
Yeah. So Germany shuts down darknet platforms specializing
That's why Dwayne's
in
so sad.
drugs.
I know, right?
Darknet drug specialists.
So this is like a small Silk Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hydra market.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what language it was? It was a Russian language darknet marketplace. They said they specialized in drug dealing, seizing Bitcoin worth 20 million euros. All right. Now, okay. We need to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin gets a bad rap, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Absolutely. It seems like everybody thinks Bitcoin is synonymous with buying human beings and buying drugs.
Right, and buying goats' heads. But that's really not. It's really not the only thing big. Bitcoin is basically. Can you imagine, Patrick? You'd love this. Can you imagine if governments could or had to use a blockchain ledger for all of the incoming tax money and all the outgoing expenses? And we talked about this, that they'd never voted in unless they were grandfathered. You could suggest a bill that says you're going to pass this bill that corrects all the problems with Congress and the Senate, except that you're grandfathered. So you can float for the rest of your life. Your job is not in jeopardy. However, the next generation is going to shape up.
I don't think so, because I think the problem is there's always black ops budgets, and they're never going to divulge how much they're spending.
Yeah, that's true. There has to be some obfuscation built in. So
they'll use Dogecoin for that.
Monero.
But anyway, I think Bitcoin gets a bad rap.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, all the coins have, to some extent, a limitation on how many coins there can be.
Right.
And if and that's why we went off the gold standards, because the limitation wasn't tenable.
Right.
But wait, we've moved away from this article. I think Germany deserves a gold star.
I agree.
From Security This Week. They are our gold star contestant of the week. Here.
We need some gold
Germany.
star music. I'll work on that.
Okay. Yes.
So what are the details of this drug crackdown that they did? What did they do?
They had 17 million registered customer accounts.
That's insane.
So it wasn't minor.
How did Germany
find it? It's
find
been around
it?
since 2015.
How'd they find it?
I don't think they
17
say.
million
but they,
registered customer accounts.
and 19,000 sellers.
Wow.
So they're selling a lot of bad stuff. Mostly drugs, forged documents,
Yeah.
and digital services. So
In quotes.
denial of service, that kind of thing. So this was a small Silk Road kind of market.
Wow.
That's insane. Well, thank goodness it shut down.
I'm surprised it lasted this long with 17 million registered customers. You figured somebody would narc sooner.
Yeah.
Although, what's funny? It's called the Hydra market, right? So when you shut it down, I'm sure 3 more will pop up.
Oh, okay.
That's funny. Dum-dum.
Be here all week, people.
So that's good news.
That's
That
about
is
as
very good
funny
news.
as Barbie with a beard.
Bearded Barbie.
Could be funny.
Bleeping Computer
Yes.
says, Bearded Barbie hackers catfish high-rank Israeli officials.
Security story headlines are weird. What the heck? I should bring that up at dinner with my wife tomorrow. Hey, bearded Barbie hackers catfish high-ranking Israeli officials. She'd be like, did you just put random numbers and letters?
When I was in high school, you would be given a test for a stroke at that point.
That's right.
You would. You know what? The names of exploits are awesome, and the names
And groups.
and the names of groups.
But then they have verbs like what is
zombie
catfish?
spiders and it's awesome.
What is catfishing?
So catfishing, other than something you do at night if you're in Louisiana.
That's called noodling, I think. We fish for catfish with your hands, and you stick your hand down their throat.
I would never do that.
There's a whole culture of people that love doing this.
It doesn't. No.
Hey, are you a noodler? Send us a tweet.
You just let them bite your hand.
Yeah.
God, that sounds horrible.
You shove your hand all the way down the catfish's throat into its gut and pull it out. That's how you catch a catfish. It's noodling.
They try to eat you, and then you try to eat them.
Yeah, I guess.
It's so horrible.
A couple of bandages for you, but it's dinner.
So phishing is when someone pretends to be someone else online, typically to entice a romantic involvement that ends in some kind of con or
or
they just appeal to your greed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that if you look at the article, there's Facebook profiles of young women who, say they're somebody and they're actually, guys in Hamas.
Wow.
Right. Or maybe ladies in Hamas. You never know.
Yeah, you don't know. Equal opportunity. But either way, they're targeting, they're pretending to be relatively good-looking women, trying to con people into clicking on a link that downloads a backdoor called barbed wire.
Wow.
Barbed wire.
Who knew?
It's funny in the graphic on Bleeping Computer, they have an icon for fake women accounts that's half woman and half Hamas guy.
Oh my!
Actually, it looks pretty good.
It could be like an old father.
Kudos to the graphics department, and that's why they call it Bearded Barbie.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, so I think the title for this show will be "Google Says Oops."
Right.
That was our leading story, and I would say it's probably the most entertaining of all of them.
I think it is.
Well, and it covers the most. They're 3 billion systems.
Yeah, but they did it. Obviously, I hope they did it. I don't know.
I think so.
Oops, they did it again.
Oops, they did it again. Yeah. By now, they probably have.
Yeah.
Do we even know what the vulnerability was?
Okay, so I was just actually reading through that.
Yeah.
It's tracked as CVE 2022-22675. Issue is described as an out-of-bounds write vulnerability in an audio-video decoding component of the Apple AVD that could allow an application to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges.
That's why my Zencaster didn't work.
Probably. So it's audio-video decoding.
Thanks, Google.
That can allow for kernel level privileges with an RCE. So yeah, it's pretty dangerous.
Okay, well, I guess that's and apparently it's fixed. So I guess that's a week.
Yeah. Go patch your stuff.
Go patch your stuff. That's why they call him Patch Rick.
Oh. That was bad.
Be like Patrick. Patch. All right, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.